Thousands of migrants now have temporary legal status. Hear from an immigration advocate on how this could help ease the asylum seeker crisis in New York. Hello and welcome to Empire State Weekly. I'm Jamie DeLine in Albany. The Biden administration is giving temporary protected status to thousands of migrants from Venezuela. That includes many migrants here in New York. Almost 500,000 people from Venezuela living in the U.S. will be able to apply for this protective status. This gives them legal protection from detention and deportation and allows them to access work permits 30 days after applying for one. Migrants without this status have to wait 180 days for work authorization.
This work permit is huge because it would allow them to use their own skills and to be able to work in what is of interest of them as well, instead of having to go on the shadows, working on the shadows on the underground economy.
Joining us now to give additional insight into how this will impact asylum seekers here in New York State is an immigration policy expert with the New York Civil Liberties Union. Zach, thank you so much for joining us. Great to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Now, for people that don't know, the Biden administration announced some big news. Can you talk about this temporary protected status and what this will mean for asylum seekers?
Sure. So the announcement you're referring to is the Biden administration announced this week that it was redesignating and extending temporary protected status for nationals of Venezuela who've come to the United States before August of this year. Temporary protected status is a federal program or designation that gives temporary status to people who have come from certain countries that the Department of Homeland Security determines they cannot safely return to for various reasons, which can include armed conflict, natural disasters, or other extraordinary circumstances. And so this designation was applied to Venezuelans who came to the country before August of this year. And there are estimates that more than 470,000 Venezuelan nationals will be newly eligible for TPS, in addition to the nearly 250,000 people who had been previously given TPS as designated for Venezuela. So it's a significant victory, or a significant first step in creating a more humanitarian immigration system and providing relief to people, particularly in New York. There are some estimates that more than half of the more recent arrivals we've seen in New York are from Venezuela. And it will allow people to apply for temporary status immediately and work authorization simultaneously, which should allow people to begin working lawfully in the United States. So it's an important first step, particularly given the numbers of arrivals that we've seen recently.
And I was just going to ask you about work authorization. I know the governor here in New York State has been saying repeatedly that work authorization will be a step forward and will help New York, sort of get out of this situation. What does this now mean for people who want to apply for their work authorization?
Right. So for people who have arrived from Venezuela within the designated period, this means that they will be able to apply for work authorization right away and hopefully begin working in the near future, which should affect tens of thousands, if not more than that, people in New York City and across New York State. It is not the only thing that needs to be done. This is a designation that applies to people from one particular country. There is still a need to extend work authorization to other people who are in New York who have recently come and are seeking asylum. There are more steps that can be taken, such as removing wait periods and prohibitive fees for people who don't benefit from this recent designation. Or redesignation, but it is an important step forward and something that should, address one piece of the situation that we've seen unfold for more than a year now.
And it speeds up the process in which they can work, right?
I'm sorry?
And it speeds up the process in which they can work, so they don't have to wait the 180 days. It's a much shorter timeline, correct?
Yeah, so for people, who are seeking asylum, there are wait periods of 150 days and then another 30 days to receive their work authorization when they apply through that avenue. And people who benefit from this recent redesignation will be eligible to apply for TPS right now and work authorization simultaneously, which will create a much more expedient process for those particular people to obtain work authorization.
And that means that they can get out of shelters faster, that they can, support their families too.
That's certainly the hope. Certainly the hope is that by giving people the opportunity to work, which is what most people want, they want the ability to work and provide for their families, for those people who have been in shelters, that will provide an avenue for them to get out of shelters and earn a living and provide for their families. That has been one of the major barriers that people have faced when they arrive in the United States, have been the barriers to work that they receive under the current system.
Now, do you think that people from other countries will soon be able to get that status as well?
I think that remains to be seen. That is certainly something that people have been calling for, is for a more expanded review of other countries that might be eligible for TPS. But again, this most recent redesignation, which applies to Venezuela, does affect a very large number of the people who have recently arrived from the United States, and a large number of the immigrants who are currently in New York, whether they came recently or before that. So this is an important first step, and hopefully something that both federal lawmakers and state lawmakers can build on.
Now, other countries that other people from countries such as like Nicaragua, Honduras, they too would like this status, correct?
Yeah, there are other countries that have been designated TPS, and there are opportunities for the federal government to expand that designation to other countries, and it remains to be seen where the Biden administration will go with that.
Well, thank you so much, Zach. I appreciate your time and insight.
Thanks.
Final regulations are in place for the adult use cannabis market. When we return, hear from the Office of Cannabis Management on the rollout of the new regulations. If you have a comment or story idea, let us know. You can email us at news@news10.com. You can also reach out on X, formerly known as Twitter, at WTEN. Welcome back to Empire State Weekly. I'm Jamie DeLine in Albany. After nearly a year of revisions, New York's final regulations are in place for the adult use cannabis market. The rules will shape how the industry runs moving forward. Starting October 4th, people across the state will be able to apply for all tiers of marijuana licenses, from growing, distributing, and selling. The regulations, however, are not receiving universal praise. One cannabis advocate explains his concerns with the registered organizations or medical marijuana organizations joining the recreational market.
The big concern is they have these huge indoor grow operations that they all get 100,000 square feet of indoor grow, which replaces the amount that 10 of our outdoor grow farmers can grow.
Joining us now to give us more insight on the regulations is the Director of Policy for the Office of Cannabis Management, John Kagia. How are you? Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, for people that don't know, there's been a big announcement when it comes to the cannabis industry. Can you explain what that is for people that may not have been following this very closely?
Well, we are profoundly excited for this milestone moment where we are with licensing and the opening of New York's adult use cannabis industry. We have just released the regulations that will govern the the market for adult use regulated cannabis in the state of New York. And we've also announced that on October 4th, we will be opening up the application window to begin accepting applications for the licenses, the operations that will lay the foundation for this immense market in New York. So on October 4th, we will begin accepting applications for retail licenses, folks who are going to be selling cannabis directly to consumers, for some cultivation licenses, for distributors who will be transporting wholesale product across the state, and for our micro business licenses, which present really a unique opportunity to both grow and sell cannabis at a small scale.
Now, on October 4th, that's when anyone who wants to enter the cannabis industry can do so, correct? You don't have to have, a special qualification prior to this?
That's exactly right. So this is what we call our general licensing application window. We will have and be accepting applications from applicants who we call social and economic equity applicants, and that includes categories that include service-disabled veterans, women and minority-owned businesses, distressed farmers, and critically, people who come from communities that were disproportionately impacted by the war on cannabis, by cannabis prohibition. So we do have, and our goal as the state, as written in our law, is to issue about half of our licenses to folks who are in this social and economic equity groups. But we will also be accepting licenses from anyone who would like to participate in this opportunity-rich market.
Now, I know that there has been a few lawsuits over the cannabis industry in New York State. Will these regulations impact that lawsuit at all, or vice versa? Will the lawsuit impact these new regulations at all, potentially?
Great question. These two issues are moving in parallel. This litigation really is focused on a central issue around some licenses that have already been issued, but they're not going to stop our ability to issue or to open the application window and to issue the licenses that are going to be released following this October 4th application window. And even as this litigation has currently enjoined us from further processing some of the licenses that have already been issued, it does nothing to impede our progress. Indeed, it might actually be resolved by us opening this upcoming licensing window. And so we very much encourage folks who might be interested in participating in this market to apply.
Now, how would they go ahead and apply if they do want to enter the business?
So the application portal is not live yet. That will be opening on October 4th. But for folks who are interested in reading the regulations, better understanding the law that governs adult use cannabis in the state, and reading all of the information that we're going to be releasing about how to apply, you can visit us at cannabis.ny.gov. It's a profoundly rich website that we've been building for the past couple of years. That includes a wealth of information that can prepare prospective applicants for what they need in order to get those applications in.
Now, how many businesses are currently legal here in New York State when it comes to selling marijuana?
So we have issued, over 700 licenses. So over 463 provisional retail licenses. We have nearly 300 cultivation licenses and another 40 or so processor licenses. So we've already got a fairly robust ecosystem in place, including 23 retail stores that are open across the state.
And I understand
this application window that opens on October 4th is going to expand that quite significantly. We have seen very strong demand for legal regulated cannabis in the state, and part of the goal of this next tranche of licensing is to continue to further expand access, particularly for retail cannabis throughout the state of New York.
And I understand that there's a surplus of cannabis here in New York State based on, what farmers have been telling me. Do you think that on October 4th that there will be a way to quickly move this cannabis throughout New York State if people want to purchase it?
So that's part of the reason why we're so excited about what's going to be happening beginning on October 4th and through the end of that application window. We will have some licenses that will be available specifically to people who have retail locations that are ready to go. And part of our strategy around this is to ensure that our growers who are sitting on any excess surplus will have additional outlets where they can sell through. To be clear, the retail licenses aren't just going to be issued to folks who already have locations. We will offer a substantial number of licensing opportunities to folks who will be submitting applications and then going out to find locations. We call those our provisional licensing cohort. But we do want to set aside some licenses for people who have locations that qualify and are ready to go to ensure that we can get the biomass that our growers, the incredible biomass, incredible cannabis flower that our growers have produced, sold as quickly as possible.
And what do you say to the people who are upset that as a part of these new regulations that people in the medical marijuana industry can now enter the adult use industry? What do you have to say to them?
Well, this is going to be a very large and very opportunity-rich market, and we think that there is room for everyone at this table. We, as Office of Cannabis Management, look very closely at market conditions to assess the balance between supply, retail sell-through, and consumer demand. And we're going to be monitoring that very closely as we expand the licensing base across the state. But it has always been clear that the stakeholders in our medical market would at some point transition into the adult use market. And we fully believe that there's ample opportunity for all of our stakeholders in this very, very opportunity-rich market to build very successful businesses that will make the state of New York the world's most consequential cannabis market. We see phenomenal demand, and we're looking at partners across the state to help us transition the existing consumer demand into a legal, regulated market.
All right, John, thank you so much for joining us and being on the show. We appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And a pandemic-era measure connecting farms and food banks in New York State will now be permanent. But a new report finds it's not reaching its full potential. We'll have the details on what can be done to change that. If you have a comment or story idea, let us know. You can email us at news@news10.com. You can also reach out on X, formerly known as Twitter, at WTEN. Welcome back to Empire State Weekly. I'm Jamie DeLine in Albany. The Nourish New York program, which started during the pandemic to address food insecurity, is now permanent. However, the state audit is finding the program has insufficient oversight. Amel Taleji reports.
Experts say 1 in 10 New Yorkers suffer with food insecurity. The program was created to alleviate this issue, as well as helping local farmers by connecting them with food banks.
So it provides money for food banks to purchase directly from New York State farmers, so they get the freshest produce, they get local milk products that are then distributed to people in need in regional food banks and pantries all across the state.
Steve Ammerman, Director of Communications for the New York Farm Bureau, says more than 4,000 farms have taken part of the program. State Comptroller Tom DiNapoli tells me this is a win-win program, but there's room for improvement.
Not only in terms of coordination and communication, but documentation to in fact show that the food products are in fact New York grown, New York produced.
The program is run by the Department of Health and Department of Agriculture and Markets. I reached out to both agencies but was unable to schedule an interview. DiNapoli says if the agencies can make the program work better, it's certainly a plus for the state.
What was nice about this audit is that the response from the agencies was positive. They generally accepted our recommendations.
Some of those recommendations include verifying purchases made with Nourish New York funds meet the program requirements, maintain a farm product list to help food relief organizations find products, and review and approve all claims for payment.
And this is a program that made sense, has been working. So we need to tighten it up to make sure that its intent, in fact, is being fulfilled. But I think we can, and I think the agencies are prepared to do that. And I think the legislature and the governor want to continue to support Nourish New York.
I'm told funding in the state budget will be set aside for this program. You can visit agriculture.ny.gov to find out more about Nourish New York. Reporting in Albany, Amel Talegi.
Stick around. We'll be back with a look at the week ahead in just a bit. If you have a comment or a story idea, let us know. You can email us at news@news10.com. You can also reach out on X, formerly known as Twitter, @WTEN. Finally, on Empire State Weekly, election season is right around the corner, and advocates around the country are taking steps to remind residents to register to vote. You can also register in person at your county board or at a number of New York State agencies. In order to cast your ballot in this year's general election on November 7th, your county board of elections must have your application by October 28th. Next week, we'll speak with the League of Women Voters on their efforts to get more people registered to vote. For now, from all of us here on Empire State Weekly, I'm Jamie DeLine in Albany. We'll see you next week. And don't forget, you can watch Empire State Weekly all over New York State. Here's the full schedule of Empire State Weekly on 10 television stations across New York.